Well, looky there, 9 a.m. sharp, and here we are, live streaming across the world. It's Jim Csek with NowMedia. With me, Iain Burns, our managing editor. Really big show, as Mark Carney would say, highly, and we're saying really big show. Lots to talk about today, lots and lots. And Carney says to his cabinet ministers, get ready to cut. Smith and Ford make a deal. The federal government wants to take a look at that ferry deal. Who's watching the border? Not Mark Miller, obviously. And a Tik Tok response to cease business in Canada. And a U.S. congressman slams Canada for lack of forest management. And oh, Joly. All that and a lot more on the really big show. But we're going to kick it off first with Mark Carney's sent out a letter and saying to all his cabinet ministers, get ready to cut. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, but here's a little clip here from CBC doing the work for the Liberals here.
Canada's finance minister has also been sending out letters asking cabinet ministers to identify where program spending could be cut back in a big way. The target for next year is a 7.5% reduction, growing to 10% in 2027 and 15% in 2028. This isn't an order to make the cuts, but it is a signal. The new Carney government is keen to get spending under control. David Cochrane, host of Power and Politics, helped nail down those details for CBC News. David, tell us what you learned about how these cuts could roll out.
Well, it's important to note that these percentage spending reductions, these are identify the cuts, not implement the cuts, at least not right away. But the direction, the signal it sends is pretty clear that things will get leaner. And just as an example of how it's going to work for this budget coming up in the fall, is each department is told they can list 3 priorities, and only 3 priorities, and they have to find a way to pay for those within the existing money they already have. So no big increases in spending, and the message is very clear to the ministers. The old ways of doing the budget are over. It's going to be leaner times ahead.
David, what's the larger message here?
What is the larger message here? Just be prepared to cut.
It might be something to do with the Liberal government being financially incompetent. I mean, that would be important, wouldn't it, to highlight?
Yeah, just like this thing is, here's outline the cuts, but it's not to cut. It's just to identify the cuts. What?
Yeah, or another way of thinking about that is it's to make sure that news reports like that go out so that people hear those noises. They hear the idea that, oh, they're balancing the budget, okay. I knew Carney would do that. Carney's such a great financial wizard. I knew he would fix that. I think it's kind of an attempt to push back on the rising chorus of criticism of Mark Carney's spending habits that have been revealed so far, because it doesn't look very good, frankly, does it?
He makes Justin Trudeau look like a spendthrift there with his $92 billion projected deficit.
Indeed.
That's the deficit. That's not the spending. That's the deficit, right?
Yeah, and it's comments that I think unsettle people when he was asked about how he's going to pay for this gigantic increase in military spending, and he kind of said no sacrifices. Like, we're not going to make any sacrifices. It'll all kind of just figure itself out. That's basically what he said in his mumbly, incoherent fashion. That doesn't fill people who are paying attention anyway. It doesn't fill them with confidence. They start to get worried when they see things like that. Refusing to put a budget out, massive deficits. It scares people, and it scares the money people, which is the last group on earth that you want to frighten, because they can destroy your country.
Yeah, you don't have this slide? Is that what you're saying? Stephen Harper ran a $1.98 billion. Oh no, that's the. Sorry, there was that Don Davies saying. Can you put that one back up? There you go. That's Don Davies, the NDP said. That's what you voted for. Well, there you go. And then who was that again?
Yeah, well, I mean,
that the NDP?
This is the problem with the NDP. Their hands are dirty, aren't they?
Yeah. And then this Stephen Harper ran a $1.9 billion surplus in his last fiscal year, or final year in the office, and he projected another 1.4. And then the wheels fell off the bus. I think the bus has no wheels.
Yeah, well, I suppose the response from Carney supporters, or Carney himself there, would be, we live in more dangerous times now, or something along those lines. Some kind of, there would be an effort made to blame events and circumstances, things like COVID, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and the tariffs and all the rest of it. But the reality, I think, is, you know, most of this Liberal government, the vast majority of it, was in a period of peace and relative prosperity, wasn't it? And happiness and jolliness for all. And that's when the deficit started to increase. That's when the GDP per capita started to slow down and productivity started to slow down and all the rest of it. It's more about the overall management rather than merely events. And you do have to remember that obviously Harper had to deal with the financial crisis as well, which was, people who remember that will be well aware how serious that was and how close we came to the brink, the whole sort of global financial system.
Well, the elbows up crowd must remember it because Mark Carney took credit for that. So there's that.
Yeah, but you don't need the details, do you? It's just, I mean, I was having a chat with someone the other day, and I was talking about Mark Carney's, you know, mixed record, let's say, at the Bank of England. And the response was just immediately, oh yeah, that was because of Brexit though, wasn't it? And that's it. Conversation over, brain disengaged, don't need to think anymore because the word Brexit has been used. Kind of just like when you throw the word Trump and it's like, oh yeah, fair enough, Trump, yeah, okay.
Well, they worked hard since winning the election, so they're on that vacation. And despite telling Canadians the country is facing the biggest crisis of our lifetimes, Mark Carney has found time to go on vacation. The Prime Minister will be holidaying somewhere in the National Capital Region. That's what his spokesman said, but the exact location won't be revealed, you know, security. And other MP will be enjoying some rest and relaxation. The Parliament shut down on June 20th and doesn't get back to work till mid-September. Isn't that how most Canadians get their holidays? They shut down around June 20th, and then they get back to work around mid-September? I'm pretty sure that's everybody.
I feel like if our elite, if our rulers and masters and overlords, if they're going to do that, then the least they could do is let us do that. Yeah, I think that would be fair, wouldn't it?
There's a new sheriff in town. Got a Stetson on. And he's awfully on holidays there, so that's just amazing. Anyway, I'm sure most Canadians get that.
I can't believe that people aren't making more of a big deal out of this, because this man is in power now. He's smiling with that cowboy hat on as he tries to flip pancakes in Calgary. He's doing that. He's in that position because he said that we were at war. He said this was the biggest crisis in decades. He said that it was life or death.
In our lifetime.
He said the Americans were going to take over. That's what he told us. He told us we were like staring the devil in the eyes. We were eye to eye with the devil. And apparently that's not true, because Parliament's off on their jollies. He's at Harrington Lake, probably, having a laugh, having a nice dive in the beautiful water there. And the isolation, the woods, it's a lovely area, lots of nice trails. He'll be having the time of his life, as are the rest of his servants. How are we supposed to look at that and say that this is the biggest crisis that we've ever faced? You know, I mean, you would expect at this point that some people might have a bit of buyer's remorse, perhaps, and think to themselves, "Oh, right, he got me there. He told me this was the end of the world, but he's not acting like it." But that doesn't seem to be the case. If anything, people now are happier with Carney than they were before the election, because the Liberal lead is something like 12 points according to the last poll I looked at. I mean, they're in absolute heaven.
Well, Danielle Smith and Doug Ford doing some work. I think they've got more done than the federal government, and they signed a deal. We're going to play a little clip here from Danielle Smith, also wearing a Stetson.
Pleasure to welcome Premier Doug Ford to Alberta for an announcement that is in every way as historic as the Calgary Stampede that he's been attending over the last couple of days, and is every bit as exciting. I'd like to acknowledge that both of us have ministers and members of our teams in the room as well, and I'd like to welcome the Honourable Stephen Lecce, who is Ontario's Minister of Energy and Mines, the Honourable Kinga Surma Ontario's Minister of Infrastructure, and MPP Will Boma, the Parliamentary Assistant to the Premier, Minister of Indigenous Affairs and First Nations Economic Reconciliation, Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs and Minister of Northern Economic Development and Growth to Alberta. He's got a very long title. Thompson. And Minister Thompson as well. All right, and Minister Thompson, who I will let the Premier tell you a little bit more about his portfolios. Oh, gosh. Okay. Missed a couple. He's going to go. I'd also like to acknowledge Alberta's Minister of Energy and Minerals.
Let's just, I didn't know we were starting there with the whole thank you here. But they signed 2 memorandums of understanding. And that was outlining their commitment in strengthen interprovincial trade, drive infrastructure development, and grow Canada's global competitiveness. The 2 provinces agreed on the federal government to address the underlying conditions to help the energy industry. Basically, they've agreed to a pipeline and a strategic corridor for energy infrastructure to connect Alberta's oil to Ontario's oil and gas and critical minerals to global markets. So it's a big deal. That was part 1 of it. It's a big deal, though.
Yeah, it is a big deal. I mean, these are the 2 like economic engines of Canada, really, aren't they? Alberta and Ontario. Ontario, a bit more bloated and inefficient, perhaps, when you look at the numbers. But they're obviously 2 very important provinces, aren't they? Certainly essential to the economy. So that the fact that they're cooperating is necessary, I think, and probably a good sign.
And the second MOU outlines Alberta's commitment to explore prioritizing made-in-Canada vehicle purchase for the government fleet. So that's to help Ontario's automobile sector. So there's a little bit of helping each other. And that's got to be the biggest deals that have been signed, or at least getting ready to be. This is MOUs right now. That's a big deal, though. But Carney also said in one of his latest interviews is that it's highly, highly, highly likely that there'll be a pipeline to the west coast of British Columbia. I don't know what David Eby's going to say about that, but an oil pipeline.
Well, he said it's highly likely that it'll be on the table as one of these projects. At which point it may or may not succeed. I don't know, but yeah, it seems like he was keeping that up his sleeve for this visit to Alberta for the Stampede, doesn't it? It seems like probably he's thought that all along, but I just don't get it. I don't get why he's such a secretive little schoolgirl, you know? I feel like we have to go and get his diary, see what he in his My Little Pony diary to find out what he actually thinks, because everything has to be so strange and like almost like rumors and whispers and stuff. It's just like I wish he would be a bit more clear and straight with us.
So this deal with Ford and Smith overshadow anything the feds have done so far, because this is to interconnect Alberta's and Ontario's oil and gas, critical minerals to global markets, and also talks about James Bay too, right, to get some infrastructure there with enhanced rail and port infrastructure. So it's a big deal and very, very interesting. So, and Saskatchewan.
And they mentioned obviously that the hope is that they can do that and then get to Ontario and then persuade Quebec to have that last, couple of 100 kilometers or whatever it is, so that it can get out into the Atlantic that way as well. But I mean, it tells you everything you need to know about Quebec, really, doesn't it? That they're not even talking to Quebec anymore. They're just building it and then hoping that somehow Quebec will change its mind and do the right thing.
Well, 2 of the biggest conservatives in, not Doug Ford, 2 of the biggest conservatives in Canada, flipping some pancakes here, and here's a little clip here. There you go. Both Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith can flip pancakes. Carney and Trudeau, not so much. And Danielle Smith is like the wizard with the pancake flipping, though. She was tossing them into bins and behind her and stuff like that. So, and then the Stampede's going on right now. And today, if you're in Calgary, you can get in for free from 10 a.m. to 2. And free admission all day long, and free coffee and donuts for seniors and veterans. There you go. Stampede.
Wow. Does that mean you get 2 coffees if you're a senior and a veteran?
Imagine if you really need it, sure. Why not? Just get back in line.
Yeah. Can't get it at the same time.
Constitutional lawyers want answers from the RCMP and TD Bank about those peaceful freedom convoys. Hopefully they dig into this very deeply, because this is an embarrassment for Canada. This when they froze bank accounts. Mark Carney was part of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, and Chrystia Freeland and a lot of the sort of big figures now of the government who remain, they remain in power. They still have power over people's lives. They could theoretically do this kind of thing again. But I'm quite surprised by how quiet most people are about this. I think most people, if you actually have a conversation with them, deep down they know it was wrong, morally wrong. I mean, as well as against the principles that Canada's supposed to stand for, against the Charter, against everything that Western civilization stands for and is. But where's the fuss? There's no noise really. I mean, it's one of those very strange things. People know it's wrong, and they know it was wrong, and they know it was a bad thing. I mean, even some quite official characters have come out and said that and admitted that it was wrong. But where's the concern? Where's the condemnation? Don't really see very much of it.
And here's another guy that admits now they never checked. The Department of Immigration in a briefing note admits it never sought comprehensive security screening of suspected Egyptian terrorists they arrested a year ago for plotting an attack on Toronto. The then Immigration Minister, Mark Miller, at the time defended his department's handling of the case. Minister Miller, in testimony last September 19th in Commons Public Safety Committee, defended his department. We're confident in our security screening. You're confident in lying, not so confident in actually telling the truth, right? MPs
he's just been in so much trouble, hasn't he, in recent years, Mark Miller? No wonder he is no longer a minister.
He was one of the 5 veteran cabinet ministers sacked by Carney. MPs expressed their astonishment over the security lapses, while other terrorists are walking around the streets here in Canada right now waiting to commit terrorist acts against innocent Canadian citizens. And that's MP Larry Brock asked the Public Safety Committee hearing last August 28th, what the hell is going on? Mark Miller, a poster boy for incompetence.
Well, Mark Miller, he's also, can be a bit of a tough guy. Or, when he was in power, I remember him saying, either you accept these asylum seekers or we're gonna fly them into your province or whatever it was, bust them over. That even irked David Eby, didn't it? He was very unhappy about that.
We did that interview with David Eby, and he said that Canada's immigration policies are daft. And Mark Miller said, they're coming no matter what you say, daft or not.
Well, he literally said kind of the sort of same language that you see in the United States from the likes of Ron DeSantis, where he just says, I'm just going to put these people on a bus and send them to you, But he was saying that from the position of authority. He was saying, you're just going to get them. That's it. You don't have a say.
Well, the Quebec RCMP have been busy here. The members of Canadian Armed Forces have been arrested, accused of plotting to forcibly take possession of part of Quebec City. 4 people, including members of the forces, have been accused by Mounties of plotting to forcibly take possession of a part of Quebec City. Police, who said they seized guns and explosives, claimed the group was planning to create an anti-government militia. That's the wrong image there, but
bit weird, that bit out of the blue. Yeah. I don't know what the hell they were thinking that they could, take charge of one of Canada's biggest cities there, but. I don't know. Maybe they would have succeeded.
Well, it'll be interesting to see
if they're guilty of what they're accused of.
It'll be interesting to see once they publish the photos of these 4 Canadian Armed Forces and what they were thinking and what's going on behind this.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting. If it goes to trial, it'll be a very interesting one to learn about. I mean, they can't claim. Based on what the evidence that the police claim exists, it's not like they could say it was just a joke or something, because it seems like they actually had the kit, didn't they? Guns and explosives and whatnot. But I don't know. Very, very peculiar.
Michael Geist out with his tweet here. Canada's decision last fall to ban Tik Tok's corporate officers, but not the app, raised immediate concerns about risks to support digital creators and cultural groups. That's weird, eh? The app can stay, but we're going to ban you from having an office here. And that was then Science and Innovation Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne that said that in a statement. The decision was based on information and evidence collected over the course of the review on the advice of Canada's security, well, CSIS, and other government partners. The order mandated TikTok to wind out Canadian business operations, including closing its office, though the app is still available. So that what TikTok's response to that is they're cutting back on their donations towards Canadian cultural projects here in Canada.
Not the Juno Awards, guys.
Yeah, Junos, yeah.
Please, no.
No more money for the Junos from TikTok. There you go. But it's odd.
It's a national disaster.
The Liberals seem to like to attack the tech giants, from Meta to Google to TikTok.
And they just lose every time. I don't get it. I mean, they got a bit of a win, I guess they would say, with Google. But that's it. I mean, every other experience that they've had, it's ended with them, with a bloody nose.
And who really won that? Google is allowed to collect the money and then give some of it back out. So Google, you're allowed to charge a tax to people, to the businesses, and then we'll give $100 million, some of that to journalism companies, like some crumbs to some media outlets. The data
it
shows,
just sort of punishes those businesses, really, doesn't it?
Yeah. Data shows the skeptical public, Canadians and Privy Council focus groups question Cabinet's rationale for record-high immigration quotas. A pollster's report on findings were delivered only weeks before then Liberal leadership candidate Mark Carney announced the system isn't working. Yeah, so Canada from 2022 set quotas on landed immigrants that eclipsed a previous record of 400,870. People set in 1913. Cabinet last October 24 tabled an immigration levels plan that proposed a general 11% reduction in quotas, including the number of temporary permits given out to like 1 million foreign students and 766 migrant workers. And findings, and it's that basically saying it went off the rails.
I don't know. Is there a single person, a compos mentis individual in this country that wouldn't say the same thing? I mean, this has been obvious since at least sort of 2022, that kind of time. I mean, it was already trending upward anyway, wasn't it? And the thing is, like, these students, why do we even call them students? They're not students, are they? They're immigrants who are choosing a more expensive option to get permanent residency in sort of the majority of cases, at least.
And many of the colleges and institutions here were living off of that too, because they get to charge more. And it, but here's a table that actually outlines kind of the problem across Canada. And you look at some of these things here. In St. John's, the population growth was from 2021 to 2024, 19,264. Number of new dwellings, 1,800. So look at that. You add this many people, and we even look in Kelowna here. They added 19,606, and number of new dwellings, 6,500. Sorry, 6,400. And if you look at Vancouver,
you can round that up, 65.
337,000, and new dwellings, 67,000. So where are all these people supposed to live?
I just can't believe that for a period of time it was impolite, and it was almost kind of, it was almost passé, rude to just bring up this obvious fact. People would be like, "What, you got something against immigrants? Like, are you a racist?" It's literally like logistics. It's like, the most basic physics, if you want to look at it that way.
The compromised media did a really good job of carrying the water for that one too. Anytime somebody tried to challenge it, and they would make sure that those are the things that were pointed out, that you're obviously a racist.
Yeah. Until their Lord and Master and Lodestar, Justin Trudeau, came out with harsher language on immigration than anybody on the right had used in years. But he was allowed. He was permitted to just come out and say, "They're bringing our wages down. They're ruining our hospitals." It's like, all right, Justin, chill out, man.
And here's a letter here from Congressman Tom Tiffany wrote a letter that says, slamming Canada's lack of forest management. We've talked about that so many times. We've done so many stories on forestry here in British Columbia and the lack of attention to mitigation in that. And they say that they're tired of the smoke coming from Canada, that they need to actively work on forest management. Well, we know a key driver of the issue has been a lack of forest management. We've also seen things that likely serve one way or another. Multiple large fires have been ignited in Canada. Those are the arson fires. With all the technology we have at our disposal, both for fending and fighting wildfires, this worrisome trend can be reversed if proper action is taken. There you go.
I mean, it's the response from a lot of ideologues on the environmental left to that would be, we did try and do forest management. It's called a carbon tax or an EV mandate, because that is literally how they think, a lot of these people. They don't think about actual practical solutions to the real physical world as it is. They think in abstract terms, just complete fantasy terms that don't really belong in a serious conversation. So the Americans are coming here with pragmatism, basically, and just saying, like, fix your forests. Whereas so often what you hear from the Liberal Party, the NDP, and the Greens is conversations about emissions and things like that, as if, again, here I am saying this again, as if Canada could do anything about global emissions.
The Jasper wildfire, is a prime example of bad forest management. They were warned for years to take the dead trees out of there and did nothing. And that was under the watchful eye of then Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault, that says it's immoral to even discuss Bill C-18.
Indeed, that's what happens when you're an ideologue, though. You tend to think in those terms. You tend to think in black and white terms, don't you? And the idea of moral and immoral, and that blends in with your political hobby horses. Very, very, very odd.
We got some people immoral at near the end of the show here, so stick around for that. We're on every morning at 9 a.m. weekdays, and Iain's going to be off next week. We're going to have a special guest coming in to join us, and they might come in and do some practice stuff here starting Thursday. But every morning, 9 a.m., if you could share that out there with people, if you enjoy the show, we'd appreciate that as well. The next one here, the Order of Canada used to mean something. Now it's a participation trophy for political loyalty. So that's, again, an opinion article written by the National Post saying the Order of Canada has been exposed as a sham, and this is because they gave out the Orders of Canada to Theresa Tam and Dr. Bonnie Henry.
Well, I mean, that right away we saw, didn't we? We saw those names and we thought that's going to be very controversial.
Exactly. And now, Joly, she was going to hand out some money to Rio Tinto. Rio Tinto had, because they said they needed, because Rio Tinto had $11.6 billion in profits last year and generated $23 billion in cash. In its largest shareholder, China. That was once a proud Canadian company as well. The chair of the board of the directors is Trudeau's former ambassador to China, who also used to run McKinsey. That's that one that they use for a lot of McKinsey and Co. That's millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars spent on consulting with them. Joly obviously never looked at their annual report before and saying the Carney Liberals were considering bailing out Rio Tinto. Now Joly says she misspoke. Perhaps she is simply not qualified to do the job, or perhaps Liberal insiders can stuff their money. Unbelievable. And this lady here is in charge. Hey?
Of industry. That's a job that should be done by Monopoly Man. That should be done by Andrew Carnegie's resurrected corpse. Instead, it's this woman. It's not fair on the other contestants when she appears, because she just, as soon as she shows her face, she wins Fool of the Day. Is there any competition? We might as well call it now. It's not fair.
She should just pull out one of those red noses and stick it on her nose every time she speaks. Joly.
Yeah.
You know what? And as bad as this file as she has for innovation, she did a worse job as foreign affairs. So.
Well, I mean, her successor is giving it a go, isn't she? She's another challenger there.
But you know, like here's somebody that actually gives Melanie and Joly a run for their money and Fool of the Day. This guy should go in the Hall of Fame, I think. And that's most Canadians don't even know who the NDP leadership hopefuls are after Jagmeet Singh destroyed the party. Well, Ottawa indulges in a long summer snooze. Things are not looking good for the Orange team, according to a poll research. Most voters don't know who the NDP leadership hopefuls are. That comes on the heels of the party's poor election results, with its former leader and I guess he's also campaigning with or competing with the mayor of Toronto for the dance star. Like they're both big dancers. So after Jagmeet lost his seat, Olivia Chow and Jagmeet Singh, maybe they'll go on tour. What's that? There's that dance competition show, Swinging with the Stars or something like that. I can't remember what it's called. There's some kind
yeah, Dancing with the Stars, is it?
Dancing with the Stars. Maybe they could go on that show. Jagmeet Singh.
I think Jagmeet Singh could easily do something like that, like pursue a sort of media career. I wouldn't bet against that.
And in Holydown, this is a Holydown Blacklocks story, and this one's really deep. They've spent over $500,000 fighting the government on this, and this is Blacklocks' legal channel of theft of its work by the government of Canada as a test of passwords used by publishers, says a secret memo to Minister Guilbeault, and he's in charge of that stuff now. The decision may create uncertainty amongst right holders. So yeah, so Blacklocks' legal challenge of theft of its work by federal managers is a test of passwords used by publishers in Canada, says a secret memo. A pending appeal in Blacklocks Reporter versus Canada, because the government or the court said it was okay, was being monitored closely. So the memo, the decision may create uncertainty among rights holders, and that was an April 3rd departmental memo. Copyright issues raised by Blacklocks Reporter versus Canada, and they're monitoring that. And Blacklocks is challenging a 2024 federal court ruling that the government offices could lawfully share passwords to its paywall store without payment or permission. Isn't that just ludicrous? So they buy one password and just share it out with everybody. The decision came in the case of Parks Canada manager who bought a $148 Blacklocks password, the rate charge at the time, and despite repeated warnings, shared it with any coworker who asked, and at least 9 people if you need access to the Blacklocks article. There you go.
You would think that the immediate analogy that comes to mind, or the immediate comparison, is when you buy like Microsoft Windows or whatever, or Office, or even like the Adobe product. It would almost be the equivalent, wouldn't it, of like getting one of those and then just sharing it among your colleagues? Because obviously you can't do that. They make you buy a certain number, don't they, for each user. But I don't know. It is an interesting bit of law. It's kind of yeah. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that this has been wrapped up in sort of legal disputation for so long, because it is quite hard to wrap your head around. But just that one, the Adobe like software, that comparison, you'd think would be enough to sort of see them through with their argument.
Yeah, the fact that Blacklocks is editorially a thorn in the side of the government because they do all these FOIs, really, that's what their whole function is the bad energy behind all of this, wrote Law. It's a vindictive abuse of state power. I mean, they're fighting this battle. That's their battle. They're fighting this password thing. That's how they make their money. Ours was, we had an audience that we earned of over 200,000 in Facebook and Instagram, and they took that away without any compensation as well. Well, they selectively fund our competition. The government has all
kind of like Pierre Poilievre says, not to make it a blue v red thing necessarily, but it was quite a wise comment that he made, I think. So we shouldn't be afraid to use it. But it's like they made the business model through their laws. They made the business model for the media no longer viable. Then when the media started to sink, as many people, such as Michael Geist, who we just featured, didn't we? They all warned this would happen, a lot of these experts. Sure enough, it happened. And then they subsidized certain ones. So they it's like they raised the water level. Lots of people started to drown. And then they threw out a few life rings, didn't they, to their selected friends. And here we are.
And then CBC getting some heat from this. This is all over the internet. And this is after Travis sent his resignation letter and made it public as well. CBC responded and said it's not true. That was, But it's all over. I mean, you can find this story everywhere, and the resignation letter there, and we have the next clip there. We post there. You can see that's his resignation letter. Basically, in his resignation, he's saying he wasn't allowed access to conservative politicians and not allowed to give them a voice, and he wanted to have diversity of opinion, and he was told by CBC no. And then they did a bunch of tactics to kind of, you know, I mean, it's pretty obvious. We talked about this yesterday. It's pretty obvious that the Conservatives don't get as much airtime on CBC.
I mean, I mean, even if this guy's completely wrong and it's some sort of personal vendetta or something like that, that it's revealed, that doesn't change the fact that what he's saying is obviously true. And it's just, the only question is the specifics, like how exactly is this, how is this system implemented by the managers at CBC? That's what we don't really know. And that's what he's trying to reveal here. But the fact that they obviously exclude not just conservative voices, but conservative interpretations of reality. That's one way of putting it, isn't it? Because they, you know, when you write a story, when you sit down to write a story, you can never really write it neutrally. It's not possible for a human being to do. But at CBC, they don't even try. They start with all of the assumptions of the post-Cold War liberal order. That's how they see the world. That's the orthodoxy that they believe in and adhere to. And it's obvious, you know? So every single one of their stories, everything about that network is left liberal. It's clear to anybody. The thing that sort of drives me mad, I suppose, is that they ever claim that that's not the case. If they just openly admitted that and said, yep, that's true, then we could move the conversation on. And we could say, all right, well, why don't we start a conservative equivalent of the CBC? Then we can have two. Then it would be fair, or you know, whatever. There could be a more sensible conversation. But they hold on to that falsehood that they're neutral because obviously they don't want to get to that stage. They don't want the next topic to come up.
The Online News Act in Canada still continues, and it has devastated local independent media. And like you said, they have selectively decided to fund some and allow others to die or choke them off. It's absolutely ridiculous. Even Liberal MPs agree that this thing needs to go, and yet it still exists. And again, Stephen Guilbeault says it's immoral to question it. Let's move to.
I would love to question him about that. We're trying, aren't we? We're seeing if we can have a conversation.
We've reached out many times. In international news, Prime Minister Netanyahu personally nominated President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. And I watched that little clip there where they had their dinner. It's kind of a weird thing where Trump holds like the dinners and he allows press into the room and they, you know, and they ask questions. And it's kind of like, it's almost like you have access to him almost all the time and wherever. Whereas in Canada, we get, you know, like there's very little access, especially for local independent outlets, to the federal Liberals. How many times we ask for, you know, interviews and even comment. But here you go, like there's people in there asking questions, and he's not the first person or not the first government to nominate Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize.
I mean, I would be astonished if it happened. But
yeah, I would be as well.
Let's see.
Lots of letters went out on Truth Social yesterday. Lots of letters, and that included Japan at 25%, South Korea at 25%, Malaysia, Myanmar, and a whole bunch of them, just from all over the board. I don't know if any go out today. Did you see any go out today? I haven't
I haven't seen any more. I mean, I think I'm past the point of taking, you know, each act in this melodrama seriously now, because he's just making it up on the hoof, isn't he? There's nothing systematic about this.
Thailand, yeah, just like, I don't know. Canada didn't get a letter yet. Well, hopefully we don't get a letter. And then they go after China-owned farmland in America here. So we're going to play this clip here from the FDA, I think. No, sorry. Let's play this clip.
Today, we are taking this purpose and our American farmland back. American agriculture is not just about feeding our families, but about protecting our nation and standing up to foreign adversaries who are buying our farmland, stealing our research, and creating dangerous vulnerabilities in the very systems that sustain us. Reshoring and nearshoring our food and agriculture supply chain is essential for our nation's security. In coordination with the White House, the Departments of Treasury, Defense, Homeland Security, and Justice, as well as state governors, state agriculture commissioners, local, tribal, and territorial governments, today we announced the USDA's National Farm Security Action Plan. This plan includes 7 key action items, and there's a lot of people here that I want you to hear from, so I'm not going to go one by one, but just very quickly. It's on our website. The press has gotten a preview of it, and we can ask some questions once we finish the main program. But very quickly, and perhaps the most important, the first of the 7, is securing and protecting American farmland ownership. Actively engage.
There you go. You can go watch that full clip if you want. They caught 2 Chinese nationals just recently bringing in a something that would attack the U.S. crops.
Yeah, some kind of pathogen, wasn't it? Plant pathogen. Yeah. I mean, how easy would that be to do? There's I would be astonished if that hadn't already been happening in a big way. Because it's just too easy. It's the easiest thing in the world to do that. And another thing is, like, a lot of these pests that somehow find their way from Asia, like that Japanese beetle, and there are loads of other ones that just like wreak havoc on North American plant life. If you were sat there in the Communist Party HQ in Beijing, obviously you would do that, wouldn't you? It's like a complete no-brainer. But yeah, not often something that we hear a lot about. So it was quite interesting to see those arrests. Yeah.
You'd be surprised if you looked into how many Chinese companies own natural resources in Canada. Actually, the mine site that I was a controller at was bought out by a Chinese company. And we just talked about Rio Tinto, one of the largest miners here in Canada. So if you want to look under the hood and see, because again, a lot of Canadians weren't investing, but the Chinese were clearly investing, and they bought a lot of farmland in the United States as well.
That's so strange, isn't it? That a country that has no real individual freedom of ownership, not really. I know people say that they do in a sense, but not really. The party can just seize anything that it wants if it wishes to. But it's very strange that a country like that would be allowed to buy American farmland or really anything in America or Canada or anywhere in the Western world. It's very odd, isn't it? But that's kind of the Faustian bargain that we've made with the Chinese Communist Party over the last 30 or 40 years. And I think we're starting to realize that there's a price to pay for it.
Bill Gates, another big buyer of farmland in the United States.
Hamas, he's American.
Yeah, Hamas used rape as a part of the deliberate genocidal strategy during the October 7th massacre. That's as a group. The Islamic terrorist group Hamas used rape during that October 7th atrocities in Israel, according to an all-female group in Israel that's demanding justice. The Dinah Project's report is based on testimony from 15 former hostages who were held in Gaza, as well as survivors of the massacre in 2023. This is a BBC story.
This is being promoted by the Israeli Foreign Ministry as well. So the Israeli government, or publicized, let's say. And I think, in part, I get the feeling that they're trying to counteract a lot of the propaganda against the state of Israel and the accusations that they're committing genocide, which is now just ubiquitous. It's just absolutely everywhere. That word is being used almost like matter-of-factly now, isn't it? Than the idea that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza, to the point where I think, even me saying this now, a lot of people would be like, well, what do you mean they're not committing a genocide? Like, of course they are. But the strange thing is that the controversial position in my mind is to accuse them of committing genocide. So I feel like, sad as it is, maybe a lot of people in Israel, including the Israeli government, are kind of taking this opportunity to remind the world that they also feel like they were genocided, or attempts were made anyway.
And that Texas flood there took a lot of lives, a lot of young people's lives as well. And there's this pediatrician, a Texas pediatrician, is no longer employed by a chain of clinics in Houston after a social media account in her name published posts wishing people in the state get what they voted for amid deadly flooding. Bluefish Pediatrics said of the woman named elsewhere as Dr. Christina Propast, we do not support or condone any statement that politicizes tragedy, diminishes human dignity, or fails to clearly uphold compassion for every child. Some of the stuff that she posted is clearly very insensitive, right? Saying that they, that these are MAGA people and they got what they deserved.
I mean, she's either mentally ill, which I think is likely, or she's, she's basically the equivalent of somebody in 1943 in the United States writing some kind of screed against the Japanese or something like that. I don't know if you've ever read those primary sources. The Americans went all in on the Japanese, as like the English and the Canadians did on the Germans as well. It's almost like she's in a war in her head, and she's talking about the enemy. She's talking about the Nazis or something like that. I think a lot of people do have that into that they're stuck in that way of thinking. But the way she's written that post there strikes me as somebody who's severely ill in the head.
Let's move on to our BC news. And then BC Ferries, you and I interviewed Dan Albus just recently, and he said when we interviewed him that, because he's part of the committee, the transport committee, and that they would see if they can get an investigation on the go. And we're going to listen to this clip here first.
This is an issue that I think the transport committee needs to be seized with. Essentially, we have found a continuing story of where we find new insights as to what the government is doing, and it's not good. Originally, when I pressed the Minister of Transport on this in the House of Commons, she actually said that she wrote a letter outlining her concerns that the BC Ferries, which is owned by the good people of British Columbia, was purchasing ships. And I won't go through the whole June 16th, 2025 letter. Remember, this was only about 3 weeks ago. But I'm just read the first paragraph and the last. It is with great consternation and disappointed that I learned of BC Ferry's recent announcement that it has selected China Merchants Industry Weihai shipyards to build 4 new major vessels. And the last paragraph, I am dismayed that BC Ferries would select a Chinese state-owned shipyard to build new ferries in the current geopolitical context, and I ask that you verify and confirm with.
There you go. And he said he just needed to get one Bloc member, one Liberal to vote to get that committee to look into it. And they voted yesterday to investigate the taxpayers' financing of the shipyards in China. So members approved the motion put forward by Conservative MP Dan Albus here. He's the MP here locally, Okanagan Lake West, South Kelowna, to find out who approved the use of scarce public taxpayer funds for this Chinese state-run company. And they said, we expect ministers to appear. So yeah, David Eby, when he said, mind your own business, looks like they're making it their business to mind.
And I mean, that was a comment that didn't age very well. I don't think he'll be saying that again anytime soon.
And Harman Bangu has been on this file steady. He has not let up. And we have him today, I believe, or today or tomorrow. He's in the calendar twice. We're going to talk to Harman Bangu about this. And he said that the NDP is handing billions to Chinese state-owned shipyards that uses slave labor while hammering out our own industries and with an industrial carbon tax that makes it impossible to compete. And that's what we've raised that concern a million times as well. Like, how are they supposed to compete? And it just makes no sense. And then David Eby had a bit of a response here. We're going to play a little clip here because some of the reporters are asking him questions here just recently. So let's play this little clip from Premier Eby.
Obviously, this is an issue that continues to be controversial, and at the heart of it is the fact that it's a Chinese state-run company that's building these BC Ferries. The provincial government obviously supports BC Ferries as well, which has purchased these vessels through the Chinese company. What's your reaction to people who continue to be upset and concerned about the fact that it is a Chinese company building these 40 vessels?
Well, Rob, we're certainly when I heard, I wasn't pleased with the fact that the contract was going to China. I wasn't happy with the fact that no Canadian company bid on this contract. We've made good progress on shipbuilding in this province since I've been Premier. There's 39% more people working in shipbuilding. Specifically in this province, we dedicated $25 million to grow the sector that was matched by private sector investment that resulted in the creation of 500 jobs in shipbuilding in the province. And I believe there's an opportunity for us to work with the federal government to ensure that the next round of ferries is Canadian built. But the challenge that we have is an unequal ferry system where users in Atlantic Canada are heavily subsidized at a rate of 300 to 1 compared to users of the BC ferry system. And I certainly hope that's part of the federal conversation.
So they invested $25 million. They invested $25 million in shipbuilding here in BC and sent billions of dollars to China. Seems fair.
But his answer there, if you just like dissect, I think there were 3 elements to his answer. It's quite devious. He's becoming quite a sort of disreputable chap, old Eby, I think, in his desperation. But the first thing he said was, when I heard about this, I didn't like it. I didn't like that there was a Chinese company that won this contract. That's almost like saying somebody who's driving to Vancouver saying, don't like this. Don't like that I'm driving to Vancouver. Turn around then. Stop the car and turn around. You're the driver. But that straight away, I just thought, what? What the hell is he saying? Then he goes on to a distraction technique where he says, yeah, those newfies, they get loads of nice ferries, unlike us. And then the other one, which is so out of context, he's never been called out on this, as far as I'm aware, is he said, I wish a Canadian company would have bid on it, which is a very similar language that he uses about pipelines, where he says, oh, I wish somebody, well, he doesn't say I wish, but he says no company wants to build a pipeline, actually, without any context, like saying, mentioning all the bills that make it impossible to do that. But he's saying, I wish a Canadian company had bid for this. Why do you think a Canadian company didn't bid for this? Might it have something to do with the fact that they knew China was bidding? And if China bids, heavily subsidized communist state, what's the point? What's the point of even trying to compete with that?
They said in the bid that this would be like basically focused on cost. So how can Canadian companies compete?
Totally. And why would you wait? Like we've said this many times. I don't know if David Eby maybe he hopes that people listening to him don't know this. It costs a lot of money to bid for a massive contract like that. Not only money, but time, staff. You know, sometimes these bids, they're like years in the making. Sometimes they cost like millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars to put bids together. Why would a company waste that much energy and money to bid when they knew that the Communist Party of China was also bidding? What's the point? It's just so it's so disappointing from David Eby. I'm just, again, it's not the first time, and it won't be the last time, that I feel like he's tried to insult me and everybody else listening to him there with that response, because it's so low grade, you know?
So the question is, does David Eby support the use of slave labor here in British Columbia and no industrial carbon tax and to use inferior steel in the building of it? Because that's what China's doing. So, and then you say you invested $25 million here in shipbuilding in British Columbia, but you've sent billions of dollars to China. Why not invest that here? Anyway,
isn't entertaining the possibility that this contract could be cancelled. That's not even a possibility in his mind. He's just saying, I hope the next ferries are Canadian made. It's like, it's like you're the boss. You are literally driving this car, and you're saying, oh, gee, I hope the car's going to stop at some point. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? Stop the car.
And then the other pot on the stove here for the BC NDP that is frothing over is, again, this healthcare crisis here. And again, Oliver announced that they had to close their emergency department, and that's closed from 4 a.m. till noon today. And then these closures are just all over and over and over and over again. And then we talk about building houses here in Canada. And then we need to, like the federal Liberals, they want to actually create a whole new department, a new cabinet for building houses. But we're going to play this small clip here as to what is really going on. Let's play this clip here.
The housing crisis in Canada is getting worse. West Group in BC is one of the largest home builders there, and they've just laid off 12% of their staff. Condo sales are stalling, pre-sales have collapsed, and developers are just canceling projects because the numbers don't add up. It's not just West Group either. Last month, Rennie Marketing laid off 25% of its workforce. So what's the problem? Well, it's the outrageous cost to build, and far too much of that cost is taxes, charges, and fees at the local, provincial, and federal levels of government. In Vancouver, over 20% of the price of every new home is government. The Liberal government in Ottawa talks about speeding up construction, but their plan to make that happen is not to reduce the cost of government and to remove the many barriers that government creates for builders, but it's to add to the bureaucracy by creating a third federal housing agency. Canada doesn't have a shortage of builders, and builders don't need help with building. They need government to get out of the way. The path forward is clear. Let's cut the red tape, reduce the cost, and let builders do what they do best. It's time to focus on what works. Less bureaucracy, more homes.
That was part of
bureaucracy is the key.
That was part of the Conservative platform to cut some of those DCC costs. I interviewed two representatives from Fortis BC yesterday. We talked about this energy that they're doing. They're looking for 1,100 gigawatts of energy here, and they're doing it through wind. They had about 20,000 gigawatts submitted to them, and they're going to choose 1,100 gigawatts. But go watch the interview. There's some interesting stuff in there for sure. That's all I'll say about it, just in the interest of time, because we've got a lot here to get through. David Eby made an announcement, though, yesterday. It said they're increasing the tax credit for gamers at Electric Arts in Burnaby there. So BC boosts tax credits for developers of video games, virtual reality simulators. So that's been a big kind of thing here in British Columbia. So the tax credit will go 17.5% to 25% in September 1. Here's where you're helping out certain industries, which is also when the credit will become permanent to give the industry additional certainty. And he spoke that at the EA in Burnaby there. It will help the sector remain competitive as a part of a larger economic response to the American tariff threats. There you go.
But then he says this is a wake-up call. The province has to develop an economy that can stand on its own 2 feet. And the way to do that is to subsidize certain industries that presumably can't stand on their own 2 feet. Why will they ever be able to stand on their own 2 feet? I don't. When will that happen? When is it going to be the case that Canada is going to be able to rival the United States as or Britain, which is another major player in the production of video games? I wonder.
And then Rob Shaw had this tweet. This young lady here, Charlene Pollock, where they denied the medications. They're very, very expensive medications. If you're going to be a government that yanks medication from the hands of a dying 10-year-old girl, you better have an ironclad case to back it up. As time goes on in this case of Charlene Pollock, it's clear that the BC NDP do not. You can go read Rob Shaw's column on that there. So on the Orca BC.
I mean, it's terrible. Regardless of the justifications and the sort of arguments about it, it's a terrible look, isn't it, for a government to be seen to be denying a drug to an ill girl, to a sick girl. It
kind of flies in the face of free, when they talk about free healthcare in Canada.
Yeah, well, indeed, it all has a cost.
No, but I'm just saying, like, they're denying her access to this drug.
Yeah.
BC Conservative leader John Rustad faces criticism from several sides amid reviews, right? There you go. Lots of people calling out John Rustad there.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be one to watch. I don't. My gut feeling is that he's not going anywhere, but I don't know. Maybe. If he's looked at as being the guy that he led the kind of insurgency, he led the revolution, but now you need a kind of more stable leader figure to see it through.
Well,
Maybe then Rustad will be retired.
He brought that party from obscurity to basically annihilating the BC United Party, but then, like almost immediately had three conservative MLAs defect to Tara Armstrong, Dallas Brody, and Jordan Keeley. They defected right away and created their own party. We talked about it yesterday, One BC. I think only two of them are in that One BC party, though.
And that is, the people that warned the Conservatives and warned Rustad about their candidates said, like, you haven't really vetted these people. You don't really know who they are. You don't know if they're serious. They're going to feel vindicated by that, obviously, aren't they? Because they're going to say, look, you've lost three MLAs now. I was going to say MMP. You've lost three MLAs now, and that's because you didn't vet them properly. You wouldn't, if they brought in, as we said many times, didn't we? Like a lot of the big figures in Okanagan. If they brought them in, I don't think they would have gone off and defected, because they have a long history. You know who they are.
Yeah, let's move on to markets. So we got 10 o'clock already, and here's a couple of stocks, Canadian stocks, and these are the apparel stocks. Group Dynamite there. It IPO'd there just recently around the $20 mark, and then kind of like cratered down into the $11, and now is rocketed up into the $27 mark. And the Globe and Mail reports on Tuesday edition, the National Bank financial analyst says that he's got an outperform ranking on this and has a share target of $32. There you go. So if you're into Group Dynamite, that's that clothing brand you see in all those malls there, and they just went public just recently. In Aritzia, another Canadian stock that is basically rolling out into the U.S. there again, is they've got a target on that one of $85. And you might pull up the chart there, look at Aritzia. And it fell off there when all those trade stuff started to talk, but look at Aritzia recover. The one that hasn't recovered is Lululemon. Lululemon got hammered hard on the trade stuff, and even on some of their choices in their they got that fight going with Costco right now. They're suing Costco because Costco has targeted them by selling knockoffs to Lululemon's leggings and jackets and stuff like that, and are way cheaper. So lots of flashback or pushback on that. And the stock market kind of flat. It's off about 130 points in the Dow. And the rest of the board is kind of green, just like off and on. The TSX is down a little bit. Not much really going on there. And then gold again was off this morning, barely, but still hanging in that $3,300 mark. Off about $35 this morning. Canadian dollar hanging into that 73-cent thing as well. Canadian dollar hanging in there. But Bitcoin, we're going to play the small clip here from J.D. Vance talking about Bitcoin.
And when it comes to crypto, I think the last several years have made it clear that we're talking about genuine, ground-up innovation, one that's already improving the well-being of tens of millions of our fellow citizens. I believe it's 50 million Americans own Bitcoin, and I believe that's going to be 100 million before too long.
Bitcoin, wind in the sails of the Bitcoin. Lots of wind in the sails. I mean, that's pretty good adoption in the U.S. if that turns out. Again, very favorable, this administration versus the previous administration. There was a lot of attacks on Bitcoin. Now it seems to be this administration is very favorable to Bitcoin. Pierre Poilievre was favorable to Bitcoin, and Justin Trudeau mocked him when he was promoting it. I think he bought some shawarma or whatever that shawarma in Toronto there, something like that, with Bitcoin. And Pierre Poilievre has disclosed that he has about, and that was a while ago, about $10,000 invested in Bitcoin. The Vancouver mayor also wants to make Vancouver the Bitcoin hub of Canada. And again, lots of wind in the sails of Bitcoin. I don't know how many people listening own any Bitcoin, but lots of wind in the sails of the Bitcoin, though.
Yeah. A lot of people are insanely bullish on it, aren't they?
We did the Bitcoin
just go and go.
We did the Bitcoin show here a while ago. We talked about Bitcoin. I think that was when it was trading in the $50,000-$60,000 range. And that's an American price, 108. So like in Canadian, that's like close to $150,000. Close. just for one imaginary Bitcoin.
Pretty cool.
Let's move on to our tech sector. And Mark Zuckerberg is rocking the AI space there, and he's just poached more people from Apple, top AI exec. So Meta's poaching everywhere. Poaching, I don't know why you would poach anybody from Apple. They're not so much in the AI space, but yeah, they're paying up to $100 million for, that's the annual salary, and then bonuses. Crazy. Like,
I think Zuckerberg has shown himself to be very ruthless, isn't he?
Oh, yeah,
he's a shark, isn't he?
He's definitely like, you know, when the Canadian government went after Meta, and they thought Meta would back down. Like, I don't think they understand Zuckerberg. They should have watched a few clips of Mark Zuckerberg first to see where that would go. And to the detriment of Canadians, news is blocked on Facebook, even to the point now where the Carney Liberals and the government have decided to start spending with Liberals. And look, I mean, with Meta. And Mark Zuckerberg must be laughing, you know, as they spend well over $5 million while Canadian news outlets are banned from Meta. At the doing of Bill C-18, a bill put into power by the Liberal government. Elon Musk's Grok 4 launches on July 9th, so he says that this thing is going to be the latest and greatest. So Grok 4, supposedly, going to be unbelievable.
Everything he does is unbelievable, isn't it, in his words?
That's right.
But I guess we'll wait and see.
He's done some pretty amazing things as well, though. Pierre Poilievre, he's talking about the EV mandate. He must have been listening to us. EV mandate, let's play a little clip here from Pierre calling for pulling the plug.
From Calgary, Alberta, where it's stampede time and I'm reconnecting with a lot of old friends in my hometown. A lot of people who still drive gas-powered cars, something the Liberal government wants to ban. I just finished a tour of many amazing Alberta communities from Drumheller, Hanna, Donalda, Killam, Stettler, and many more, where distances are long and weather is often very cold, which means that a electric car is simply not practical. You need a truck, obviously, to do a lot of the work that farmers and oil and gas workers do, and that work is essential to the existence of our country. We need that work to go on, but Mark Carney and the Liberals plan to ban that work effectively by banning your gas and diesel-powered vehicle. So, next year, they say that 20% of all the vehicles on the lot at the dealership have to be electric, rising to 100% by 2035, less than a decade from now. This is going to be a massive cost increase and a massive convenience decrease. It is going to be amazing.
Sporting those nice aviators there, rocking the aviators.
Yeah, he's been watching Joe Biden, I guess.
Yeah, the aviators, the old school aviators that I wore back in the 80s. So the 80s have called and they want their aviators back. Mr. Poilievre.
I wear aviators as well, to be honest. But I mean, I get they look funny, don't they? I'm not gonna defend them.
Again, Honda also revising its EV strategy. It says it's going to focus on hybrids. We've seen that announcement from Honda that, you know, the government, both the Ontario government and the federal government, doled out billions of dollars in corporate welfare to Honda to build its EV plant there in Ontario, and it says put that on pause. And it looks like they're putting on pause for longer. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze here. But Honda's announced significant changes to its EV strategy, canceling plans for large electric SUV and reducing its EV investment from $68 billion to $48 billion through 2030. And it says it's going to focus on hybrids, and particularly for the U.S. market. That's not good that's an ominous sign from Honda and saying what it's going to do. Canada better wake up after doling out billions of dollars in corporate welfare to Honda.
Yeah, to that self-same company. Yeah, but like this is an extremely successful and shrewd company, a car company that has survived through a lot of dark patches when other companies perished. So, I mean, what do they know? What is it? What are they basing this on? Like they clearly have some analysis. They've done some analysis, haven't they? And it's worth taking seriously what they see about the future of the market. But the question I have immediately looking at that is like, what the hell is Mark Carney doing on vacation with his entire party, the whole parliament, just like got their feet up now by the lake, while Canada's #1 value-added industry is threatened with complete annihilation. And that every day we talk about a bit of news that makes it even more dramatic and worse each day that we talk about it. It's kind of, where's the hustle? Where's the adequate reaction to that? Because I'm not seeing anything from Mark Carney.
Well, Pierre Poilievre led the charge to cancel the consumer carbon tax, and now he's on the EV mandate, and I'm sure they're going to have to back down. I don't think they have a choice but to back down on this. I think they're trying to figure out how to back down on this EV mandate, because there is, in my mind, there's no way that they can hang on to this EV mandate if they want to have an automobile sector in Canada. But the Chinese have this new robot here for crowd control. Take a look at this. We're going to play it without any sound here, but let's play this little clip here. That's good. Pretty scary.
Could imagine a few of those in downtown Kelowna.
In our health sector here, RFK getting sued by a few organizations. A coalition of doctor groups and public health organizations are suing the U.S. government on Monday over a decision to stop recommending the COVID-19 vaccines to most children and pregnant women. There you go. Fruit Loops. Who doesn't love Fruit Loops, right? Fruit Loops, eh? And notice they don't spell fruit with fruit, though, right?
They don't want to be sued for false advertising.
Here's a doctor I follow on X here. I'm going to play a small clip from him.
The grocery store is a train wreck, guys. I used to love Fruit Loops as a kid. You probably loved Fruit Loops as a kid. Maybe your kids eat Fruit Loops. Did you know that Fruit Loops contains high fructose corn syrup, it contains seed oils, and it contains multiple dyes, yellow 6, red 40, red 3, blue 1, some of which have been linked to hyperactivity and behavioral problems in kids. This is what we're feeding our children? This is what we consider healthy because it's low in fat? I didn't even know that Fruit Loops had seed oils. I knew it had high fructose corn syrup and some fake dyes.
There you go. In Canada, the Fruit Loops don't have the dyes. They have natural colorings aligning with the Canadian food safety standards. But Fruit Loops banned in many nations in Europe, though, right?
Yeah, and I suppose we should. We have a laugh quite a lot about bureaucracy and experts and so on, don't we? And we mock them when they do stupid things and unnecessary things. But I think by and large, in the food world, they do quite a good job, don't they? And certainly that's true in Europe, as you mentioned, where they're another level entirely higher.
France, and Austria, Norway, Finland.
Yeah,
they don't like the red dyes.
The consequences are you go to a grocery store in France or something like that, and you get your food, and it's so much nicer. I can't even put it into words. If there's somebody out there that hasn't done it, it's so much nicer than what you get in America. Well, I spent a good few months in America at one point, one sort of like continuous trip, and I was just eating that garbage food every single day, and it's sickening. It makes you ill. It's complete trash, and it's obviously because of stuff like this, because they let these demonic corporations get away with putting just poison in the food. And like the bread, for example, the bread is just like absolutely rancid.
Well, I mean, I would say, like, I used to love cereal. I ate a lot of the cereal, but we don't buy cereal anymore. Cereal is basically sugar, wheat, or sugar and corn, sugar and wheat, and sugar being the leading ingredient. Fruit Loops there. Fruit Loops is just, there's no fruit in Fruit Loops there. It's just, and all these dyes, I think one of the victories for the RFK Jr. has been getting these food giants to remove the dyes. It'll take them some time to remove the dyes from the Skittles and all that other stuff there, and unless they get sued by these the people that make the dyes and saying that they're so good for you, because like how are you going to color your insides with all these red 40 yellows and get all these bright colors in your cereal bowl? Like, you know, if you you want to be healthy, stop feeding your children cereal, basically. I don't know of any good cereals out there, but maybe somebody knows.
I think, you know, like porridge, like oatmeal, that's all right, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess that's a cereal, but sure. But I'm talking about the name brand cereals.
Yeah.
They put that nice heart logo on it, and they talk about valuable source of vitamins and minerals, and the first ingredient is sugar.
Yeah.
Anyway,
starch, things like that.
We're on to the Are You Serious section, and then we're just going to play this clip because everybody's on vacation, and this is what they're doing while they're on vacation. There you go. That's how you party when you're on vacation. I can't full screen that.
It's just Diana there.
Hey, there you go.
It's all about this one.
Thought we were going to get full screen, but oh, maybe. I do want full screen. It won't. There we go. No full screen. And then here's Protect Our Wildlife, and this is somebody that doesn't like Elon Musk there, as they killed the bird and changed it to an X. The WWF is asking for the stop killing of the birds. And then the Epstein list is in the news big time. Pam Bondi and Kash Patel getting a little heat for that. Where's the list? Where's the list? And they basically said they'll blow up the planet before they show you the list of my friends.
It's very suspicious, isn't it? Very bad practice from Pam Bondi and the rest of them. And then this one here is this one here. I think a lot of millennials or Gen Zs can relate to. Why do all these lazy kids living with their parents? Says Grandpa, who once bought his 5,000 square foot house for just 2 potatoes. You need more than a couple potatoes now to buy a house. But fool of the day. I'm going to let you do it. A couple of bitcoins might get you. A couple of bitcoins, yeah, you get at least the garage. I mean, fool of the day, we just knew it from the start, didn't we? It's Joly. Why compete? You know, it's like the what's her name again? Dolly Parton, the Dolly Parton song, Jolene. The narrative in that song, I think, applies to Joly in terms of fool of the day. I think if we ever get an interview with Melanie Joly, we have to start it off with, "Oh, Joly, so what's going on today?" She just, you know, God bless her. I'm sure she's probably quite a pleasant person. And I found that to be the case. All the politicians, I've met so many politicians in my time, and they're always, just about anyway, they're always nice, normal people who seem very well intentioned, very decent. And I'm sure that applies to her. But I just get the impression from her sayings and doings that perhaps she is not the best person in this country of 41.5 million people that we could put in that position, to put it lightly. Yeah, there you have it. That's our show for today. I'm Jim Csek, with me Iain Burns, and we'd like you to like, subscribe, share it, help us, you know, fight Bill C-18, see if you can reach out, do different things. Media needs to be free and independent in Canada. That'd be nice. That would be nice. We do thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside.